around 3 years. Okay. Got it. Okay, so yeah, but I'm originally from Hong Kong around 30 years ago. So I'm really happy to be able to immigrate, like to work and live in this land. When I first come to Canada, one of the most amazing things I like about is the nature, like all the parks and all the natures and also different food and veggies and flowers that are happening in Canada and here. So and right now I happen to work in a school as well, which is a Pei Elementary with the native, which is an indigenous focused school. So I'm also very honored to able to know more about the people here and the land here. So I'm going to say the land enlargement in English and also in Chinese because I speak Cantonese, okay? So I acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh。我好榮幸能夠喺呢個原住民嘅傳統、祖先同埋美國嚟嘅土地，係包括係有 Coast Salish、Musqueam、Squamish 同埋 Tsleil-Waututh 嘅土地上一起工作、生活同埋長大。So something about PIRS. Our vision of PIRS is to honor the strength of diverse women and empower their contributions. So we work with a lot of immigrants and refugees family, and our mission is to deliver accessible, inclusive, low barrier programs for immigrant and refugees women, and also their children, to help them to create a sense of belonging, meaningful participations, and leadership. And this year is actually our 45th anniversary. We started off established in 1975. We have programs in Metro Vancouver, including the city of Vancouver, Burnaby, New West, and Surrey. So, and we have like community-based trauma-informed English class, leadership development, and family and literacy program. And just recently, because of the COVID, we also got into the food literacy project, which I'm going to introduce you and tell you a little bit more about what we did. So as you know, COVID started 2 years ago in spring, like during the spring break, right approximately at this time. And at that time, we did a needs assessment with all our participants, and we find out that their food access is really needed, in the family that we serve, mainly the refugees and the new immigrants. So for that, we start off with food help, and also we are very happy to have a KPU to partner with us to provide a veggie box and food hampers to our family. And while we do this like food hampers and also the veggie box to a family, one of the things that we find out is that the immigrants or the refugees who received the hampers and the veggie box, including the food that is locally grown here, they have a little bit of challenges. They don't know what kind of food it is. They never eat it before, and they don't know what to do with the food. So having that little challenge, we apply for a grant with KPU to do a little research, because we hope to give them food, but then we also at the same time, we want them to enjoy the food that we give it to them. So that's how this little research project come along. And we in last year, we actually surveyed around 300 people and family, and to ask them about their experience in receiving local food and eating local food. So that's how this projects come along, and then I will pass it to Emily or KPU, and they will tell you a little bit more about our project.
Thank you, Val. Before we go to our partners at KPU, I would just like to invite Carla from Metro Vancouver to say a few words. So we were able to obtain funding to support this research from Metro Vancouver Agricultural Awareness Fund, and very grateful to be joined by Carla today. So over to you.
Thanks, Anastasia. Yeah, just the Metro Vancouver board does provide these agriculture awareness grants. They've been providing it since 2008. And last year, as you mentioned, we did approve granting, or the board approved granting for Pacific Immigrant Resources Society to fund this project. And these grants are really intended to be used to raise by nonprofits to raise public understanding about the importance of local food and agriculture production in the region. And so Metro Vancouver is very pleased to support the research this project will provide, especially in helping us understand the challenges that immigrants and refugees face accessing local food here. So we're really looking forward to your presentation.
Wonderful. All right, Emily, I will stop sharing my screen and I will take over admitting people into the room who are still joining so you can focus on your presentation.
Thank you so much. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. I'll give it to you, Walapak.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And my name is Walapak Polisap. I'm a senior research associate at the Institute for Sustainable Food Systems. For those who don't know us, our institute is an applied research and extension unit at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. Our mission is to advance sustainable local regional food systems to support food sovereignty goals of diverse communities. And we know that during the past 60 years, the makeup of our Canadian society has evolved rapidly through immigration from people from all corners of the globe, you know, not just from Europe. Immigration has always been important. It increases the population and the labor force when our natural birth rate is low. Diversity also helps us as a society to progress, make better decisions, and grow our economy. For myself, I'm originally from Thailand. So for greeting, I say Sawadee ka. So I immigrated here by choice, and I had my support system and a job ready for me when I arrived. But still, I found it very, very hard to get settled in. I didn't truly feel that Canada is my home until many, many years later. And so I can only imagine how hard it is for many people who may be less fortunate. And I imagine that even just basic thing in life like food could become a burden sometimes, or could be a source of stress as well. And as a researcher, I think and I dream a lot, and it has become my passion to contemplate about an overarching question of my work here. So how could we build a local regional food system to act as a vehicle to support social integration for immigrants and refugees while maintaining their cultural identities? Emily, can I have the slide advance, please? Yeah, so this is an overarching question that you know, I've always been have this in mind, and I know that as food system researchers like us, we are not experts in working with immigrants and refugees. So we reach out to someone who is, which is PIRS. And so during the past year, the ISFS and PIRS have been working together to build a research program on local food system and newcomers to Canada. And today, my amazing research assistant, Emily Burkholder, will be sharing some of our initial results with you. And so I'll be monitoring the chat to, if you have any questions, you can feel free to write it in the chat, or you can save it at the end to ask them. And so without further delay, Emily, please take it from here.
Thank you, Walapak, and thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Emily Burkholder. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a graduate student here at KPU, and also a research assistant on this project, and a master's student at Royal Roads. I've been working with Walapak on this project for this year, and I'm really excited to share where we are at in the stages of this project. So as I've mentioned, this project is really in its early stages, and we have a few goals to amplify the voice of vulnerable newcomers to better understand the food access barriers they face, and to create conversation among service provider organizations, policymakers, newcomers, to find strategies to increase participation in the local food system. We started our search with a literature review to get a better understanding of what research has been done, and we observed 4 main challenges to accessing food among newcomers. They are economic. Economic was found to be the largest challenge that kept families food insecure. Geographical. Difficult to acquire knowledge of where to access your food and how to navigate new food environments and finding stability in food resources. Organizational. It can be difficult sometimes to access the services that are available. There is paperwork associated with this. It could be not culturally responsive, and there is stigma that exists with accessing these services. And finally, social. There can be language difficulties and challenges accessing culturally appropriate food. So within the first phases of this research, in the first few steps, we have been gathering information and hearing from newcomers. We conducted a survey at the end of 2021, and we've had a number of focus groups early this year. And we've been investigating the food environment by reviewing policy and understanding what initiatives have been put forward by service provider organizations in the region, in BC, and across Canada. So I will start with our survey. It was translated into 7 other languages, and it could have been completed online or in person at the PIRS food hamper locations. We received 178 usable responses, and participants were from 40 different countries. Nearly 90% were women. And this is because we asked just one person per household to participate, and that person is the person who's responsible for the shopping and preparing the food in the house. Similar to what we found in the literature, income was often the main source of food insecurity. For all of the survey respondents, their household income was much lower than the median household income in BC, which was $75,000 in 2020. A number of the survey respondents received financial supports from governments or through food banks and other organizations within the last 3 months. And many of them were unemployed and seeking a job. So for newcomers, food is a way to connect to their faraway homelands. And in our survey, we asked respondents if they felt that they had access to their ethnic food. Nearly half said that they usually or always had access. And this could be a reflection of our very culturally diverse region that we live in. In general, people felt moderately stressed when they were unable to access food from their culture. And the key barriers to accessing ethnic food was price of the food and difficulty finding specific ingredients. So often newcomers come to Canada from different climates, which means they may see fruits and vegetables that they are not familiar with. So even though they are master chefs in their own country, the confidence in cooking may not translate in Canada, and this can affect food access. So in this question, we asked if they had purchased and eaten foods and vegetables that they didn't know prior to coming to Canada. And the answers were quite split. One half saying that they had tried a bit, and the other half that they hadn't tried much at all. The top 3 reasons why people were reluctant to buy unfamiliar fruits and vegetables were not knowing how to use them, the price of the vegetable and fruit, and not being sure if they would like them. So these reasons are all related, because when food is expensive and you're not sure if you'll like it, it can be difficult to spend your limited income on something that you may not like, or it may be wasted. To make things easier for people to try unfamiliar fruits and vegetables, our respondents said that they would prefer to have a free sample or to be shown how to prepare this food. And that's an important implication of food hampers and food bank initiatives, because by including different fruits and vegetables in donation boxes, it can expose newcomers to things that they may not buy, and they might consider buying it in the future. 18% of our respondents said that they don't feel that they have good skills to prepare food. So things like instructions or adding recipe cards, this could really encourage people to increase their food literacy. We asked about the term local food, and over 60% of respondents said that they had heard the term local food before. So from an awareness campaign point of view, the word local food is buzzing and is among this group. However, 45% of respondents said that they thought local would mean Canada or within BC. And when asked if they had good knowledge of the seasonality of different food, 39% said yes, and 20% said no, and the rest were somewhere in between. We also asked an opinion question, and 65% said that they preferred BC grown food versus imported food if it was available. And folks mentioned this later on in our focus groups as well. They mentioned that local food has better tastes. So in this section of our survey, we asked about a few different activities that could connect people to our local food system. For example, growing food at home, or visiting a farm, or buying food from farmers markets. People indicated, we asked if they hadn't done these activities, why they hadn't. And among these three categories, growing food at home was the least engagement. And that key barrier was space. For farm visits, the key barrier was not knowing any farms that they could visit. And for purchasing food at a farmer's market, the key barrier was location. So similar to the previous question, in this question, we asked if respondents would be interested in different activities related to our local food system. So the size of these rectangles here relate to the number of people who indicated they were interested in that activity. So if we combine this blue square, growing food at home, and growing food at a community garden, this orange square, together they could be being able to grow your own food. And this activity is the most popular among the choices from the respondents. The other popular responses were farm visits and learning to cook new food. Oh, there we go. So moving to our focus groups. So we had the survey, and then later on we had the focus groups, and the focus groups were participants who stated in the survey that they would be interested in further research and sharing their experiences. So we hosted 4 focus groups in 4 different languages with translators. And as an icebreaker, we asked participants to pick a picture of fruit or vegetables and they were shown, and to tell a story. So I'd just like to share a few. One person said that life in Canada is like a chili pepper, small but spicy. The other said that life in Canada is like a plate of garlic scapes. So it's all entangled and confusing. And these sentiments really capture well how life in Canada could be for newcomers. So I'll just share a few key points from the discussions in our focus group. First is that people understand that they have to try to adapt to the new food environment in Canada. And people are willing to try things and to adapt. And if there are things that they don't know, they often look it up on the internet. Second is that food brings different generations together through cooking and sharing a meal, and food helps maintain heritage. Third is through food-related activities, people were able to make friends and have connections, things like potlucks at English classes, or being a part of a community garden or cooking classes. These activities were very valuable, but because of the pandemic, these activities were halted and it was hard for people to connect. And finally, from the focus groups, food affordability is on everyone's mind. Many had received food from various charities and they felt grateful, but they indicated that they would prefer some sort of income assistance program or some sort of subsidized food options so that they could choose the food that they want rather than accepting food that is available from food banks. So connecting and hearing these stories from newcomers was a critical place to begin this research. And in compiling all this information, we moved on to investigate policy within the region, as well as understanding what initiatives are servicing newcomers. So we've done a little bit of a review of the policy landscape here in Metro Vancouver. This is a bit of a breakdown of what we have reviewed so far. So some things on high levels, the region level, and other things on the municipal level. And this is an area that is a work in progress. We know that there's definitely additional valuable policy and documents supporting our food system. This is where we've started. So if there is anything here that you see is missing, please feel free to let us know and share what your insights with us. So one thing that was common among all of these plans within our region is that we know we are rich with newcomers. We are rich in immigrants, rich with refugees. So it's important to be aware of the issues facing newcomers. Some gaps that we saw among these policies that we reviewed are that newcomers are often lumped into a variety of other categories, such as marginalized people or low-income people. However, it's important to note that newcomers have a very unique experience, especially in terms of accessing food. So, and a lot of these plans had little to no mention of immigrant or refugees or newcomers. There are some highlights. A lot of the official community plans that were reviewed do want to foster intercultural exchanges and foster food security services. The City of Vancouver's food strategy from 2003 sets out specific goals that are inclusive of the newcomer experience. And there was diverse consultation on that project, which included immigrants. The Metro Vancouver Regional Food System Action Plan has a goal to improve access to nutritious food among vulnerable groups. These are just a few examples. There are many more, but it's so important to know that there are initiatives and there are champions doing amazing work in this field. Another incredible and very timely point I'd like to make is that City of Vancouver's Councillor Boyle is presenting a motion to Council today about protecting local food assets. So there is work being done, but again, there aren't any specific documents addressing newcomers. And perhaps if we want to target this issue, we have to rethink this. There may be a need for a specific strategy or policy to address this specifically. There isn't much data available to policymakers to reference. And so with this study, we want to present that data. So the responsibility of assisting this population can fall on the backs of service provider organizations. So that's where we wanted to look into more of these initiatives. And there is a wide range of initiatives supporting newcomers in Metro Vancouver. And we'd just like to give a few examples. And if there are more examples that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them. We are looking to learn more about this, but I've broken it down into some initiatives into these categories, which were key areas that came out of our prior research. So increasing food access among newcomers is important because Income can often be prioritized to meet other needs, such as transportation or housing, medical bills. These things can all be put as a priority, leaving food last. So increasing food access means giving food to people who need it. And these initiatives can support a good diet, which can support the overall health and well-being of newcomers. Immigrant Link Center Society, based in Coquitlam, is providing healthy food to newcomers from surplus food. And the region has a variety of amazing food banks. One that I'd like to highlight is the Muslim Food Bank based in Surrey, and they provide food hampers for specific dietary needs, including religious restrictions for newcomer families. And there's lots of other services similar to this. What we've heard from PIRS, we have the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, and there's a variety of food rescue and redistribution organizations such as Quest Food Exchange, Food Sash Foundation, Food Mesh, Vancouver Food Runners, and there's lots more. Food literacy in this context can be understood as learning about food. So understanding how to prepare and cook and budget for different foods can be understood as food literacy. So as Valerie mentioned earlier, and as we found in our research, newcomers are often given food from these incredible initiatives, but this food can be different and new. So food literacy is about showing families how to cook these foods that could be considered staples in Canada. This could be something as simple as what to prepare for school lunches or what to send your child to school with. And our food system is built on convenient food, which might not always be the healthiest. So it's important for families to know this information and be able to make the best decisions for their families. And we have great organizations doing this work in the region. We've mentioned earlier, but I'll reiterate it, PIRS delivers food skills programs to promote food literacy. The knowledge is shared in various languages with childcare, and there's also food skills programs through Diverse City. We have the BC CDC that are specifically targeting newcomers. So tapping into the wealth of food knowledge within the newcomer community will help our food system thrive. Providing business opportunities within the food industry helps provide and promote diversity. Not only does it support the food system, but it also helps newcomers establish themselves and become more resilient. And we know from the 2016 census that 61% of business owners in the food and beverage sector are immigrants. So there is a strong connection between newcomers and food services. And a local nonprofit, Flavors of Hope, they promote entrepreneurship opportunities to newcomers. Their program offers workshops and knowledge sharing, and they provide networking. But they also provide a kitchen to start their food business and online tools to support their business online. And there's lots of other initiatives in Canada doing similar work, such as Paramount Fine Foods that hire refugees, and Yasim Syrian Cooking in Ontario. So the labor shortage in the food industry is probably something that we've all heard of. The industry was especially hurt throughout the pandemic. And newcomers are a key source of labor within the food service industry. From the 2016 census, we know that more than 1 out of every 4 workers in the food and beverage sector are immigrants in Canada. So supporting newcomers it supports the industry, it supports economy, and it supports, again, their lives and well-being. Food Processing Skills Canada is a nonprofit that provides immigrants various skills to work within the food and beverage industry. They provide e-learning skills programs and relevant food certifications programming. Also from Nova Scotia, we see a pilot program that began over the pandemic to address this labor shortage. It's called Occupations in Demand, and it's to streamline the employment process for immigrants into the industry. The Government of Canada has something similar called the Agri-Food Pilot, and that helps support the labor needs in the Canadian agri-food sector. And all of these categories and dimensions are so critical for the food security and the success of newcomers in the region. However, it's the deeper connections that are being developed with these programs that are really supporting families. It's the connection with organizations and meeting new people and developing a network and starting a social life, and which all these things can really alleviate those feelings of isolation and loneliness that could be experienced in a new country. And being a newcomer can be stressful, which also has a major impact on well-being. So connecting people who have a shared similar experience, who share language, who understand your culture can really help that transition. And there's two organizations that cannot be left out of the conversation: the ISS of BC and Mosaic. They don't specifically tailor their programming to food initiatives, but they have a very strong role to play in creating connections of newcomers. So to summarize, this is just the first phase of our research. We've found that it's important to recognize that immigrants and refugees have very unique needs within our local food system. There is a need to have inclusive and culturally appropriate entry points into our local food system to reduce those barriers. And there's also a need for continual engagement and collaboration. Academic collaboration, for example, from us at KPU, the ISFS, or for example, SFU and their food system labs. There's a need for collaboration among local government to see some cohesion, but it's important for folks that are working in this field and living these experiences every day are at the forefront of this. And this includes service provider organizations and newcomers. Their involvement and empowerment is critical in this research. So what's next for us in our project? Phase 2 will involve further research with stakeholders to deepen the understandings of the limitations among services and policy. And in phase 3, we plan to connect all these points by working with service provider organizations, providing this information and empowering the connections to be made among policymakers and newcomers. And we aren't going to claim that we know what to do, but we're on a mission to seek out the people who do. This is why we're working alongside PIRS, and we're aiming to create a culture of collaboration and connecting experts with and giving people a voice to take action. So thank you so much for joining us today and for hearing what we have to say. We are open to answering questions and hearing what other people are doing. If I've missed anything, please share with us. And we have some time now to open it up to the floor.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Wolapak, do you want to say a few words, or should we?
I just want to just borrow the wisdom of Malala Yousafzai, just to emphasize what Emily just said. In a recent interview I heard from her, she was asked if she believed that there are now more platforms for girls to express their opinions and make their voices heard. And she agreed. But she also added that what is more important is where these voices are heard, because she would like to see the voices being heard more during the policy making and implementation process. And that's the whole point. That's what we hope to see here as well. We hope to be able to empower our vulnerable newcomers to share their thoughts and ideas for solutions to local policymakers so that appropriate measures can be taken strategically. So if you have any anything that you would like to share. I see in the chat that many of you come from different organizations. If you want to share your experience, feel free, or if you have any questions, feel free to chat or unmute yourself and ask. I think there was one question from Heather from the BC Farmers Market. She asked whether we could share information of the origin or the profile of the newcomers in Vancouver specifically. We have that information. I can't remember off the top of my head, just Vancouver specifically, but we can connect later, Heather. Feel free to reach out, or I'll email you as well. So, but in general, with let's say the country of origin, we have quite a number of people from the Middle East and Latin America, and also East Asia as well. So these are the three main regions that most of our survey respondents come from. And the age group have been mostly in between in their 30s and 40s. And let's see.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in terms of those who participated in the survey, it really reflects the population that we serve at PIRS. So immigrants, refugees, newcomers, women specifically, and some of the most vulnerable folks in our communities, really. So because we were connecting with them and leveraging the relationships that we have with these communities, it is reflected in who took the time to respond to fairly lengthy survey and then also attend the focus groups. I also want to mention there was a question about the gift cards. So yes, that's something that we always build in the budgets for proposals and always try to acknowledge the time that our participants take, being part of this kind of research studies. And we know that giving them a gift card that they can use for whatever they want is a better option than, some kind of item or even like food item or otherwise. So, yeah. I'm suggesting that if people want to speak, maybe use raise hand function so that we can see everyone, but also feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead as well. Anne, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the presentation today. I was very interested in this research. I'm Anne Todd from Fraser Health, and I work as a project leader for food systems and food security. And I'm curious as to how far your reach was for this program. Like, I'm thinking Metro Van in my mind goes as far as Langley and down to White Rock, but I'm just thinking you probably had a smaller geographic area that was covered in this research, and I'm just wondering if people can speak to that.
Yeah, so for the in-person data collection, so we rely mainly for PIRS to help us, because many people need kind of explanation of how to fill in the survey. So this would be concentrated in Vancouver and Burnaby. But we also reach out to other organizations as well to help us distribute the survey online. So we distribute the survey online, and we targeted all municipalities in Metro Vancouver, and it ended up being it's really difficult to reach people through online as we know it, and this is a live and learn experience from our part. Like, we were a little bit greedy in terms of trying to get information, so our survey was a bit long for sure. So some people started the survey and then halfway through, like, oh, I've had enough, no more. It ended up being that Burnaby, Vancouver quite a bit, and also we got some from New West and North Vancouver, Delta, Coquitlam, Richmond, Surrey, just all over the place. Yeah.
Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that there are some food security action tables happening in pretty much every community in Fraser Health, and I can link you to the coordinators, or at least the Fraser Health representatives on those community partnership tables. So if you wanted to look at some of those individuals for stakeholder interviews, they might be very useful for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm curious to know if what was shared resonates with experiences that you all have in your communities or your own personal experience. It's always good to hear because, we had a certain sample where we believe it is fairly representative. But if anyone would like to share, what you're seeing in your programs, your organizations, or in your personal life and your family experience.
Hi, I'm Sarah and I work for the Vancouver Public Library. And I just wanted to say I have spent many years visiting at community food hubs with book giveaways, and things related to food were always super popular. We could never have enough cookbooks in particular. And so the desire to want to learn is just insatiable. So I just want to say that definitely resonated with me. And I also want to say that part of my job is collaborating with other organizations. And so I'd be very happy to both learn and share more with any of these amazing people, but particularly those who focus on or have focus in Vancouver. So, and this was exceptional. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Also check the chat. I put in some links. I'm a librarian. I can't help it. So I've got broken down data that Heather might find helpful. It's got neighborhood by neighborhood demography, including age. It's very in depth. So that is in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I also love data. I was just looking up some statistic while writing the research grant, and it was amazing actually, because we found that like 30 years ago, immigrants or refugees or newcomers who were in the kind of the very lowest of the income were only about 13%, and now, like 30 years later, that number increased to 30%. So that's quite something to think about, to contemplate, what's going on. Yeah, so Emily mentioned also that in the next phase, we would like to study a little bit further, from the experience and viewpoint of these organizations. So maybe if you are okay, we might reach out to you later and connect with you individually from different organizations to get more insights.
And I wanted to comment on the phase 3, because that's something that we also really look forward to in terms of actioning these recommendations and creating opportunities for immigrants and refugees to engage with the stakeholders. So we have this model that we've been developing for the past 2 years called Immigrant Women Advisory Committee, where we are recruiting members from the community who have lived experience of either specific issue or just having the lived experience of migration or being a refugee. And we kind of focus the work on either, again, particular issue or just engaging with the sector on system level change in general. So our current cohort of this group is just wrapping up. They're actually having their presentations later this week. It's kind of more internal, but they've been working on projects around childcare, about employment, mental health, and racism. And so they're identifying the issues that they find important. They are developing their own solutions and co-designing those solutions and then implementing them. So as the organization, this is the kind of work that we want to continue supporting on different issues. So our next cohort will be really focusing on childcare, the childcare system as a whole, and looking at the equity questions, both for the users of that system, so parents, caregivers, but also workers, because we know that immigrant refugee women are overrepresented in that field. And we also know that the childcare system doesn't meet the needs of immigrant refugee families. So that's one particular example. So we would love to do similar project with a cohort that would focus on tackling the food system and engaging folks with lived experience in, again, co-developing the solutions and then implementing them by engaging with the stakeholders. So at this point, we don't have funding for this, but we are actively looking and hoping that the research that's been shared today and the phase 2 of the research will provide a solid foundation for this work so that we can take those recommendations, we can take this data and work with this advisory committee for them to take it further. So again, if any of you have any ideas around how to make that happen, or you have similar projects on the go, would love to connect around that.
While others are thinking, I'm just going to promote a library resource, which is Grant Connect. It's phenomenal. Any of you organizations who might be looking for grant funding, the library has an incredible resource, and I would be happy to let you know about it. It's one of the only databases you have to go to the library to access. You can't do it from home, but I promise you it is worth it.
Thank you, Sarah, because the subscription to the service is quite expensive. So to have it available through the public library is amazing. Thank you for keeping it.
Yes, and it is one that we will always keep, so keep using it. Yeah.
Another thing that I want to mention as well, you know, like when we think about newcomers and think about food, we often think right away of consumption. But there are a lot of other opportunities, right? That some of them Emily mentioned about business opportunities or things like that, or even just being involved in growing things or being an employee of a farm or something like that. And I think these are something that, you know, could be explored even further. And these are kind of like the entryways in the gateway into the food systems that I think could potentially be quite effective and can be explored further. I think this is quite important as well. Yeah, because, you know, people come from different countries. They have experience growing. Maybe they have experience growing specific things from their own country, and coming here, you know, who knows that those kind of things could be grown here, and they could find a niche in this country. For example, we have a colleague from the institute. She decided to start a small business growing Chinese green, organic Chinese green, and it was so popular that, you know, it was just because she said it was hard. It's easy to find Chinese green, but organically grown Chinese green, it was so popular. It's always sold out, you know, for example. And I think Fuluso has raised her hand. Please.
Thanks, Wolapak and Emily, for that presentation. I'm an immigrant, 21 years in Canada now, but I find that because the kind of food preferences we have is quite different. Like we, you know, as Africans, we're like, oh, there's too much sugar in the food here, but there's nowhere you go to. The vegetables taste like water. like, like the peppers, there's no taste. And, Wallapak, I think I mentioned this to you. And then there's a different type of bell peppers that we eat. It's called shepherd peppers. And, it's so there's another way to connect with immigrants, at least from my culture, is on WhatsApp. So, on WhatsApp and Telegram. So you have a lot of like 250 people on those, and, so like last summer, we had to source the shepherd peppers from Kamloops, because that's the, even I tried growing it in my backyard, but it needs to be grown. It's within like 3 months of, growing season, but very hot temperatures. And then, everybody, trying to bend over backwards for this farmer and pay, it was a box, but each one was like $32 that we had broke out for the group, So I'm just wondering, is there a way to have those like planted in Vancouver, or like grants towards that? Because even on the group, on the WhatsApp group, people were saying, oh, keep the seeds, try and everybody's trying to say plant it inside the house and bring it out. So I'm wondering, like you were talking about businesses, is there grants or help for immigrants who really want to do this? Provide their own type of food that is good for their own health. For me personally, I can't eat red bell peppers, because it's just too much. And the bell peppers growing red, yellow, it affects me a lot. But the shepherd peppers, they're fantastic, and they look similar, except that it's tapered, and I don't see it in farm markets here, unless you drive up to Oliver or Kamloops to get it. Yeah, that's just mine.
What do you think, Carla? Do we have grants and funding from Metro Van?
That one is going to be a little bit specific, because you're talking about probably providing funding directly to a farmer. But it raises, and I don't know off the top of my head, but it raises an interesting sort of question or comment. I'm wondering if the reason why it's grown in Kamloops and areas outside of this region is because the temperatures are significantly different and there's less rain. And so it does speak to the climate differences in the province and what can and cannot be grown. And so, perhaps there's some room for greenhouse growers in this area to take up growing some different vegetables, and maybe it's more of an information sharing to let them know that there's a market here in this area that would purchase these types of vegetables, and maybe they should consider growing them. So I'm not sure if it's more providing funding directly to specific immigrant groups that perhaps wouldn't have access to where to grow it, but to connect the information to the actual greenhouse growers or farmers locally, and see if they understand that it's a way to diversify their crops, and have a built-in market right here. So it's very interesting, something more to think about too, and especially with the work that we're doing with our agricultural roadmap and really trying to diversify. So it's yeah, I'm seeing your comment. And Filoso, maybe if I could get your contact information and we can perhaps chat offline, or I'll just put my email in the chat, and perhaps we could have an extended conversation. But I'm curious if that would be more effective, is to connect with the local greenhouse growers and let them know that there's a market, that's sitting there waiting to be filled.
Yes, and it's not just in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Calgary, Edmonton.
Right.
So, the videos last year, people like, I think in Winnipeg, Superstore was able to bring it in. I think a greenhouse grower grew it in Ontario, and then they brought it into Winnipeg, and you should see the videos on social media, people fighting over boxes. Because every summer people, I buy like 7 boxes each, and then 5 boxes of the good tomatoes filled, So there's other crops that they fly in
Right.
straight from Africa, and that can be grown if we have like a greenhouse, you know, like you said, the farmers, if you can link me with those, I'll be very interested.
Yeah, I would be too.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting perhaps scenario for, you know, for other vegetables too.
Yeah.
That local growers would have no clue perhaps that, you know, that there's a market out there, but there's a group of people that would love to have, you know, a very specific type of vegetable. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see also, you know, the role of academic institution like ours, like because we have extension services, maybe we could be the one who experiment for you to see whether they're successful or not, you know, and whether it's worth it. So say, for example, yeah, so these are something that our institute, we have 2 farm school, and sometimes we experiment as well. We just try to grow ginger like last year, and it was really awesome. Yeah, so this could be something as well that we can try to experiment and see whether it works in our climate.
Yeah, and for me, it brings the question of how do we amplify this demand? Because it sounds like there's definitely demand for the produce that is not currently grown, but could be grown locally. And maybe the gap there is that the lack of that connection and relationship and engagement with the farmers, just as you were saying, Carla. And I'm a huge fan of farmers markets because I get to talk to the farmers and I get to ask them my questions about like, what is this? I'm also an immigrant here. I've been here almost 20 years, but I continuously discover new vegetables and fruits that I don't really know anything about. And so when I go to the farmers market, I know that this is when I can actually find out what it is and what to do with it. And it's kind of flow vary in terms of trying something. And of course, they also have samplings and all of that. So I think there's something to be said there about more engagement with farms and farmers through opportunities like farmers markets, and understanding that it can be really intimidating for someone who's new to the country to ask the questions and not even knowing that that's an option, right? So reducing those barriers to access even when learning about the food. So back to that food literacy as well. So great conversation. We are almost at 1 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for your participation, for attending the session. We are recording this, so the recording will also make it available. We haven't quite discussed how exactly yet, but you have the contact information from Wallapak, from Emily. If you want to get in touch with us at PIRS, we also have a website. I'll just quickly put it in the chat, and there's contact information there as well. So yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for more updates and more research and engagement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta run.
Yeah, can you stop the recording, please?
Yes.